SoundCloud. Yes, we're recording. All right, I'm not that old. Cool. So since we have a small group, we can probably go ahead and do intros before we get started. So my name is Justin Tarbell. I use he, his, him pronouns, and I am the area director for Bluestone, headed into my second full-time year back at JMU, but I was a grad and undergrad here, and I was a grad HE in McGraw-Long and Gifford for 2 years. So, Laura.
And my name is Laura Blazewicz Miller. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm the Chandler full-time hall director, also going into my second year here at JMU this September. I've never been at JMU before, but I've been elsewhere in higher ed for the past 4 or 5 years. So excited for this journey.
Cool. Okay, so we will go ahead and get started, and I am going to share my screen. Okay, can you all see that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so we are going to be talking about being an RA in a first-year residence hall tonight, and what are some of the things that you all might encounter, and what are some of the things that your residents might need as we go throughout the year.
So starting out, kind of just a general flow of our agenda of events is kind of going over what buildings first year students will be in on campus, what you can possibly expect as an RA in a first year community, some common questions that some RAs have going into this community, whether it's first time or they're a returning RA, but they're coming from an upper class area, and then kind of just some general closing, Q&A, and then we'll see you off and see you again at training.
Side note, hey Laura, do you have the presentation that you can screen share? Because I just realized I can't see the waiting room if I'm screen sharing.
Yeah, I can pull it up, but you have to give me properties to share.
Ah, yes. Okay. Stop share. I forgot that was going to be a thing.
Okay.
Okay, you want to try it now? Sweet.
Y'all can see that?
Yep.
Cool.
Perfect. Good call. Okay. So we have got a plethora of first year buildings on campus. So these are kind of broken up by area. So in Bluestone, we've got Hoffman, Spotswood, and Wayland, Lakeside, both Eagle and Shorts, all of the Village, all of Hillside, and then in Skyline, we've got Chesapeake, Chandler, and Shenandoah, except for B section's upper floors, and then Paul Jennings floors 1 through 3 are also first year students.
And then within all these different buildings, there's 2 different styles. There is suite style, which could be, depending on the building, 2 or 3 double rooms are connected with a private bathroom and or like a common lounge space. So these residents will have a private bathroom, are responsible for cleaning it themselves. So for example, one that comes to mind firsthand is like Village. So those students are either 2 or 3 double rooms and they have the private bathroom. And then the second style is hallway style. It's either going to be usually a double, sometimes triple room located off of the common hallway with the community bathroom. And these community bathrooms are cleaned regularly by housekeeping. So examples of hallway style are all of the Skyline buildings. So Chandler, Shenandoah, Paul Jennings have that style. And then regardless of what building, all halls have common lounge spaces and community laundry facilities for residents to utilize. So it just depends on where in the building those are located. Some buildings have lounges on each floor, multiple lounges on each floor. Others are in the basement, and then laundry, depending on the building, is either in basement or on the first floor, or I think also possibly in Paul Jennings and 1 or 2 other newer buildings, it could be on every floor.
Cool. So one of the questions that we get a lot, but particularly in working with first year students, is will my floor residence be like my previous year's experience? And this can be for folks that were RAs or for folks that were residents last year. And the answer is no. Every community is going to be made up of different individuals, different residents, different staff, different year. I mean, this year we're going to be in a challenge unlike any that we've seen in our lifetime. So I think really just it's important to go into it with a fresh perspective, realize that this year is going to be new, but make it the best you want it to be, right? Like think about the things that you did the year, you did last year or that your RA did last year that you really liked, or maybe you want to change a little bit. And then you can use that to really help mold your community to be the best that it can be.
And then another question we usually get is, how will you connect with your residents? So typically, you would do this on move-in day, during welcome week activities, at programs and floor meetings, anytime you normally see your residents in the hallway, around the building or around campus. And again, this upcoming year with just the interesting situation we're in, you can still get to know your residents through these regular things, as well as still possibly given, circumstances on campus and like capacity limits and things like that due to COVID. You can still do things like inviting them to dinner, possibly, hanging out, maybe in a common lounge space if everyone feels comfortable, possibly, going to UREC as well as other things. Just let those connections be natural. Don't try to force them. And again, like I said, with the upcoming year and things looking different than the normal college experience we all think of being very much in person and, in groups, you can still do these things. And during training, we'll go over more of how programming will look maybe in a more virtual and limited in-person setting, and as well as how possibly you might be able to connect maybe better with your residents with some of these updates and things that we're doing to help make it more easier for everyone to possibly be involved.
So I will also add that one of those informal ways that I think, should I mock my movie? One of the more informal ways that I've seen really help is just by having some sort of hall chat. So whether it's GroupMe, whether it's Slack, and using it for like fun things too, right? So like if you see something fun happening on campus, or if you see a really fun meme, or something like that, like mine would be whenever I see a picture of a dog demonstrating how to wear a mask, I immediately think it's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life and have to share it with somebody. So if it's just funny things like that to keep it lighthearted. So I think one of the things that's tried and true to Jamie was working with orientation in our 1787 programming. And one of the big things that usually happens is how the RAs and the frogs will interact and work with. Well, this year it's going to look a little different. The last I heard, we're still not 100% sure how frogs are going to be assigned to incoming students yet. So that might not even be by residential community. So we are going to figure that out. But one of the ways that we still hope to have RAs interacting is through different sessions during 1787, like It's Complicated, and We Are JMU, and different things like that. We're hoping to be able to have RAs in those spaces as well. But again, we're not 100% sure what that will look like with the group organizations. But really, helping the residents understand the importance of 1787, recognizing that the frogs are going to be doing the same thing, and sharing how important it is to become friends with your hallmates and really just to have a positive interaction and all of that as well. And then that really just helps our residents get acquainted with each other and get to know folks across campus. So it's a good way to community build, to work with them and know what's happening. And we'll keep you all up to date as we find out more about what 1787 and that interaction will look like.
Another thing that usually comes up, and I've heard from some staff, is what if you need help or some sort of guidance, like after fall training, where we've been together and you kind of in a good way get all of this information, which sometimes might be an overload or overwhelming, depending on also again your building. You may interact with some and have some of these things come up regularly. Others might be a while. Don't be afraid to ask. It's fine to ask your co-RAs that you're in your building with, your hall director, area director, anyone really in ORL. If you have questions or you come across something that you're just unsure of, or like, hey, I vaguely remember this from training, everyone's here, and Justin and I can, speak to this. We're still continuing to learn and grow, even in, so many years post undergrad and grad. Working with students. And we just want you all to be knowledgeable and the best that you can be for your residents. So, and it's okay if, you have questions and one of us maybe says like, hey, that's a good question. We don't necessarily know or have the answer to that right now, but let's go ahead and ask it and we'll follow back up with you. And same with residents. If they come to you too, it's okay to say, hey, I have to go get that answer. We'd rather you ask questions, and if we don't know, we'll get back to you instead of us telling you something that's wrong or incomplete or things like that. And we'd rather give you the right information. So that's why we encourage you to ask questions, especially with how the upcoming year may look very differently. All through even this summer, where a lot of people are asking questions from a lot of different viewpoints, and it's been helpful because, for example, area directors may think of certain things that are different or questions that aren't being asked by hall directors and vice versa, because everyone has a different part they play. So any and all questions are welcome because we will figure out answers as they come in. So we just encourage, ask questions if you don't know or you just forget something, it's okay.
Yeah, I've kind of been saying that this year is definitely not the year to hold back any questions that you have. Training is going to look different. We're all going to be in a different headspace for training. So we will never get mad at you and be like, oh, well, you learned that in training, so we're not going to, we're not answering that question. So we will certainly be happy that you asked. And again, like Laura said, the answer might be, I don't know right now. Let me find out for you. And Laura will also tell you I've had success asking the same question 5, 6, 7 times. So if you don't hear back, go ahead and ask that question again. Maybe not the next day, but wait a couple of days and ask that question again because we do need to answer it. And sometimes persistence is key. So I want to talk a little bit about some typical issues that first year students will encounter that they'll need their RA to help them with. So one is roommate conflicts, thinking about that a lot of students maybe have never shared a room before, maybe have never even shared a bathroom before. So recognizing the conflicts from a living space are going to arise. So really being ready and remembering those mediation skills that we teach you and know that you've already got some great skills coming into the job to use through those, but then also knowing that you've always got support and backup and you're never on your own to address those. Homesickness is a big one. Even though folks might be happy to get out of their house because that's the only spot they've been in the past 4 months, folks are still going to miss being at home and miss the folks that really create an environment where they feel comfortable, whether that's with family or whether it's with friends or maybe they're independently living. Homesickness is always a real thing. JMU, isn't going to be home for everybody from day one. We hope we can get them there, but we realize that it's not going to be from day one. Academic highs and lows. We wanted to hit on highs and lows because sometimes they're going to do really well and excel and succeed, and you're going to be that person that they want to come and tell. Maybe you're the first person that they see after they just got an A on their first college test, and they're like super excited. Or maybe they, are not a great writer and they work really hard on a paper, and then they got an 85 and they're ecstatic about it. So being there to celebrate those, but also recognizing that college is hard. College is a struggle. I remember some classes that I took that not the best. So being there to support them and point them towards the resources, and maybe even it's a class that you've done well in the past, and being able to provide some personal assistance, but also recognizing what resources we have on campus to connect them to. And then student conduct issues and policy violations. I tend to find that with first years, we don't have as many repeat folks. So I think it's folks that just really don't necessarily know what those standards are. And then we do a really good job of making it an educational opportunity from the get-go. And then students really recognize, like, okay, my actions have consequences not only on me, but also on those around me. Because again, they're not necessarily used to living with other people. You know, maybe they're in a townhouse, and if they're on the second floor and they're stomping, nobody can hear beneath them. But now that there's people that live directly beneath them, they're going to hear it. So it's just reframing kind of their mindset and frame, and also then just recognizing that there's a level of independence that comes with their first year that folks may not have had before. So recognizing that maybe some folks will try some things that are not common for them, that maybe they'll try to stretch the boundary a little bit. So recognizing that there's an added sense of, I just said the word and I can't remember. Independence, there we go. An added sense of independence that leads to some of that as well.
And I would also just kind of echo for the last, two to three of like your academics, conduct, and like policy stuff. It's, you're there for obviously anytime a resident needs you to like, come listen and vent or whatever the case is. But it's also, we don't give you these things saying like, this is worst case scenario. You may have some residents that love to come talk to you about any of these things, if not more, and others that will only seek you out if they really have a burning question of maybe something that falls in this category or something else. You're there to help guide and, advise, but ultimately too, it's up to the student to advocate for themselves and like figure out what's going to be best for them and their decision and all that. So it's just some common, themes that we see each year, each semester. But again, there's always some that are different. I'm sure every year there's always something that I'm like, oh, I've never encountered that before, but it's not the end of the world. It's, a learning as you go. And then kind of going off of that is, what if you have either a resident or a group of residents that want, I would call a quick fix to some sort of problem or issue that they're experiencing, because we live in this world where everything's very automatic. Like you do online shopping and your transaction processes right away. And so because of things like that, and like text messages and things, it's a lot of people assume like, oh, I can easily get this quick fix or a quick answer to this question. Where, your job as an RA is you're there to listen, you can provide advice and resources on campus to connect your resident or residents to some sort of conflict, whether it's roommate, suite mate, or like on the floor. You're there to help mediate and facilitate conversations, help with community building. But some issues aren't always a quick fix for a resident to work through. And sometimes, residents will come and ask for help or advice with something right away. Sometimes they, wait and they either stew over it, or they feel that they've somehow maybe initiated a conversation with someone, but they maybe didn't always, or they think by texting or saying something in a group me of like, hey, it's really loud on the hall, that's them saying there's a problem. And so sometimes when it comes to your attention, it seems to you like, wow, this is really blown out of proportion and I don't know what happened. It's okay to, work with the resident and say like, hey, like take me back to when this first started, and help them kind of also realize like, hey, if this has started to be a problem, let's talk it through. But, problems never always arise at the best time, whether it's middle of the night. Usually for me, it's always on a Friday at 4:30 when I'm ready to leave. And it's letting, residents know, hey, okay, here's maybe, depending on what it is, here's some stuff that I can give you as resources, or I can help get you through the next, day until business hours resume again. If it's on a weeknight, if it's on a weekend, saying like, hey, okay, I can document this and, let my hall director know, and then they'll possibly be in touch on Monday, depending again on what the situation is. But letting residents know that there are some things that, will possibly take some time, but as long as they're okay and willing to work with you, whether it's you or even the hall director, they, we will get solutions or, possible solutions for them. They just have to kind of have some patience and work with us sometimes, because it's not always a quick fix. It's not like a lockout where someone can easily go get a key. If it's a roommate conflict or something, possibly facilities, we're relying and need other people outside of our office or outside of, you at that time to say like, hey, I can call this person tomorrow or this department and they'll work with you. But you need to have some patience for a couple hours or a weekend, whatever the case is.
Yeah, and I think too, I'll just add on really quickly, it's kind of like the old adage, like you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Um, and one of the things that, I talk about a lot is it's really hard to teach somebody how to fix their own problems. Sometimes it's easier to fix it for themselves. But, or if it's easier for you to fix it for them. But if you fix it for them immediately, they're always going to come back to you. If you spend a little time helping them figure it out, they're not going to need to come to you every time. So in the long run, you're investing in them as people while also saving yourself time. I think about this a lot, especially with first generation students. They don't have anybody else to turn to about what being in college is like. So, really helping them, like, if somebody's like, oh, like, you're struggling with your paper, go to the writing center. They have no idea what a writing center is. If you're like, oh, like, you want to, like, work out, go to UREC. They have no idea what UREC is. Like, oh, card services, the registrar, like things like that. There's an office on campus called the bursar's office. I still have no idea what a bursar is. I have no idea what that office does. And I have spent the past 10 years on a college campus. I have no idea what that office does. So imagine somebody who has never been on a college campus and doesn't have anybody to turn to who has, just how lost they're going to be. So it's really important to feed into them, help them figure out how to solve the challenges that they're being faced with, and they're going to be better off because of it. And they're going to remember that you poured the time into them to really help them figure out their challenges. So that is kind of all that we had prepared this evening. I know we've got a couple RAs that are on the call, so I wanted to see if there are any questions specifically that we can help answer for you all tonight. And feel free to either unmute and speak, or I've got my eye on the chat now that I'm not screen sharing anymore, whatever you all are more comfortable with.
So, I don't have any questions per se.
Sure.
I guess as an introduction, my name's Noah Faborg. I go by he, him, his pronouns, and this will be technically, I think, it's my fifth year on campus. It'll be my fourth year as an RA. So I have bounced around, and I have found that I love first year students because they're something else. But in going back to what you were saying about fixing problems and how it can be easier for us to fix their problems for them. One thing that I have found slightly effective in the past is focusing on getting what I will call a group mentality between all of my residents, to where as long as they are all together on one page, then once we have that group camaraderie established, I start really working into them how the policy works. So I utilize 1787 as my building block time. And then as the end of that hits, I hit them with all of the policy that none of them really want to hear. But at that point, it becomes a group effort to follow the policy, because nobody wants to be that one dude who gets caught out not following the policy. And so far that is yet to not work, but there are some occasions where one person will just kind of go off and do their own thing because they don't want to interact as much. So just my observations.
That's great. I love that you shared that, because it really shows that you've gotten your residents to buy into each other as a community and really make it a positive living experience for everyone. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I would echo that. And also it sounds like building off of that, it helps create a good sense of community as a foundation, and then off of that, probably further building and relationship building, as well as, you know, figuring out hobbies and all of that, and things that your residents like that you can then like speak to through programming and other fun activities.
Noah, do you have any other tips or tricks that you would like to share with us? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
In terms of programming, I still have yet to figure out programming. I have jumped through so many hoops for people to get things done so that it's something that they're interested in, and they still won't show up. So at the end of the day, it's if people don't show up to a program, there's no reason to be discouraged, because odds are they're not going to show up because they won't find it as interesting as whatever else they like to do. But whenever someone does show up, then it is very encouraging. You want to make sure to at least engage with them as much as possible to really capitalize on their time that they're willing to spend with you.
Yeah, and I always share that, because I think that's one of the most frustrating things for an RA is when you spend a lot of time putting together a program for your residents, and then, you know, one or two residents show up. Focus on them. Don't focus on the ones that didn't show up. Focus on the one or two that are there. You know, make it a good experience for them. And then, like Noah said, when they've got that group camaraderie, that group mentality, and they talk to each other like, hey, you know, I went to this event that Noah had the other night. Like, you missed out on a good time. They're going to bring their friends the next time. So really building off of that and focusing on the ones that are there, even though it might be easier to focus on the ones that aren't, because it's not the 25 to 30 people that you hoped for and planned for. But those one or two that are there can have a great time and appreciate you being there for them. So, cool. Well, I think that is everything. So, you know, if you all have any questions or need anything before coming back for training, feel free to reach out to anybody in the central office here in Huffman. Feel free to reach out to your hall director. Or, you know, if you see us around during training or anything, you know, stay 6 feet apart, say hi.
Wear a mask.
Yeah, make sure you got your mask on. I will probably run away if you don't have your mask on, and please don't make me run. So we are excited to have you all back. We're excited for what this year holds and seeing all the great things you all are going to do.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining in, and Noah for your participation. And I echo Justin. I know we've been lonely, either working from home or us hall directors that have been living on a vacant campus for a couple months. So we're excited to have everyone back, even if it is under different circumstances, and happy to have people back on campus, and let's get to it.